I never thought I would die before my wedding day. But I did. Twice. All because of them. Raphael, my fiancé, the photographer who captured my heart with his charm and talent, betrayed me in the worst way possible. With Bianca, my cousin, my best friend, practically my sister. I found them together in our bed 6 weeks before our wedding. The emerald ring he gave me in Santorini still on my finger as he told me I was too much, and that Bianca understood him better. That night, driving through rain and tears, my car plunged off a mountain pass. I died on that operating table. But what came back wasn't the same woman they betrayed. This time, I refuse to be their victim. This time, they'll destroy each other before I'm done. My name is Katerina Davalos, daughter of Greek immigrants who built our family jewelry business from nothing. My entire life has been filled with passion, color, and creativity. The artistic spirit that runs through my veins manifests in the jewelry I design, pieces that honor my heritage while speaking to contemporary tastes. The Davalos name has become synonymous with artistry and innovation in certain circles, a legacy I carry with pride. Growing up in America with my parents' old-world values created an interesting duality in my personality. I am loud when excited, emotional when moved, and completely unapologetic about it. These traits served me well in my designs, but sometimes overwhelmed those around me, all except for Bianca, my cousin who grew up alongside me, more sister than cousin. She was my opposite in many ways, quiet where I was boisterous, reserved where I was expressive. I always thought our differences complemented each other perfectly. I met Raphael Castiglione at an art exhibition where he was the official photographer. I was there showcasing a new jewelry collection, and he captured me with his lens before capturing my heart. Tall, with the classic good looks of his Italian heritage and eyes that seemed to see beyond surfaces into the soul of things. When he asked to photograph me properly the next day, I agreed instantly. That photo shoot turned into dinner, which turned into a romance so intense it took my breath away. Within 6 months, Raphael proposed on a cliffside in Santorini, slipping his grandmother's emerald ring onto my finger as the Mediterranean sunset painted the white buildings in gold and rose. I said yes without hesitation, believing I had found my soulmate, my perfect artistic complement. We made plans for a spring wedding, and naturally I asked Bianca to be my maid of honor. The wedding preparations brought out the best and worst in everyone. I threw myself into it with characteristic enthusiasm, sometimes overwhelming venue coordinators with my vision for a celebration that would honor both our heritages. Bianca was there through it all, offering quiet suggestions when my exuberance threatened to derail meetings, helping me select everything from flowers to fonts for the invitations. It was during this time that I began noticing small changes. Raphael's late nights developing photos became more frequent. Bianca developed a sudden aversion to meeting my eyes, and phone conversations would end abruptly when I entered rooms. I dismissed these signs as wedding stress, too caught up in my own happiness and plans to truly see what was happening right before my eyes. 6 weeks before our wedding day, I came home early with a box of Raphael's favorite pastries from the Italian bakery across town. The apartment was quiet but not empty. I heard sounds from our bedroom, a laugh I recognized, and then sudden silence. Pushing the door open, I found them together, Raphael and Bianca, tangled in our sheets. The pastry box fell from my hands, scattering cannoli across the hardwood floor. Neither of them jumped up in shock or scrambled for excuses. Instead, they separated slowly, as if they had been caught doing something merely inconvenient rather than devastating. "How long?" I asked, my voice unnaturally calm as shock froze my emotions. 3 months, Raphael admitted without a trace of shame. He stood and pulled on his pants, his movements unhurried. "It just happened, Katerina." "Things like this do?" "Not just happen," I replied, still standing in the doorway, unable to make my body move forward or back. You made choices. Both of you. Bianca had yet to look at me, her eyes fixed on the sheets she now clutched to her chest. Her silence was somehow worse than any excuse she might have offered. You should know, Raphael continued, his tone shifting to something almost clinical, that this has been coming for a long time. You and I, we look good on paper, but the reality is different. You are too much, Katerina. Too loud, too emotional, too Greek. He gestured to Bianca, who still would not meet my gaze. She understands me in ways you never could. Bianca is refined, controlled. She brings peace to my chaos. His words struck like physical blows. Too much, too loud, too emotional, too Greek. I had heard variations of this criticism throughout my life, but had never thought to hear it from the man who had proposed to me beneath a Grecian sky, who had claimed to love every passionate, unrestrained part of me. Say something, I finally demanded of Bianca, who had been my confidant since childhood. Was I really so blind? She raised her eyes at last, and what I saw there was not guilt or remorse, but a cool assessment. You see what you want to see, Kat. You always have. You were so busy planning your perfect wedding that you never noticed what was happening right in front of you. I did not scream. I did not throw things or collapse in tears. Something in me simply shut down, a circuit breaker flipping to prevent total destruction. I turned and walked out of the apartment, down to my car, and drove away without a single word more. The rain that had threatened all day finally broke, matching my internal storm as I navigated streets that blurred with water and unshed tears. Thunder cracked overhead as my car hit the mountain pass that led to my parents' home in the hills. My mind was chaos, replaying their betrayal on endless loop. The wipers could not keep up with the deluge, and I barely saw the sharp curve coming. My tires lost traction on the slick road. There was a moment of weightlessness as the guardrail gave way, the sickening lurch as my car plunged into the ravine below, and a strange moment of perfect clarity before everything went black. The impact should have killed me instantly. Later, they told me I was technically dead for almost 4 minutes before the paramedics restarted my heart in the ambulance. I died again on the operating table as surgeons worked to repair my shattered body. Broken ribs, punctured lung, fractured femur, internal bleeding. The human form is both incredibly fragile and surprisingly resilient. When I opened my eyes 3 days later in the intensive care unit, something fundamental had changed. The physical pain remained, an ocean of agony with each breath, but my emotional suffering had transformed into something cold and crystalline. I felt as if I was observing myself and everyone around me through a perfect lens, seeing layers and motivations that had previously been invisible to me. The nurses whispered when they thought I was asleep. Raphael had visited once, briefly, for appearance's sake. He and Bianca had postponed their wedding out of respect, but were still very much together. My parents kept this information from me, believing in their old-world way that such knowledge would impede my recovery. They did not understand that I already knew, that somehow I could read it in the careful way they avoided certain topics, in the forced cheerfulness of their hospital room conversations. I wasn't supposed to survive. The doctors told me later that I had died twice on the operating table before their skilled hands and modern medicine dragged me back from whatever lay beyond. My parents called it a miracle. The medical staff marveled at my resilience. But I knew the truth that none of them could see. The Katerina who went over that cliff had not returned. Something else now inhabited her broken body, something with clearer vision and colder purpose. During my 6 months of recovery, I endured multiple surgeries and physical therapy that tested the limits of human endurance. The physical pain was constant, a companion that never left my side, but it also served as a reminder that I was alive when I should not be, that perhaps I had been spared for a reason. As my body slowly healed, I cultivated the strange new awareness that had awakened in me since the accident. The hospital became my laboratory. I observed the staff, the other patients, my visitors, noticing patterns in their behavior that would have escaped my attention before. I could read micro-expressions now, the tiny tells that signaled dishonesty or discomfort. I could predict responses based on subtle cues, identifying weaknesses and pressure points with uncanny accuracy. It was as if dying had given me access to some hidden manual for understanding human nature. Nurses and orderlies whispered in hallways, unaware that I could piece together their fragments of gossip. Raphael and Bianca had postponed their wedding, a gesture of respect for my condition that fooled no one but my parents. They were still together, their bond apparently strengthened by surviving the scandal of their affair. I let everyone believe. I was destroyed by this knowledge, playing the tragic victim while something new grew inside me, something calculating and patient. From my hospital bed, I requested books: psychology, human behavior, social dynamics, influence techniques. The hospital librarian raised eyebrows at my selections but delivered them without comment. By night, I read voraciously, finding scientific language for what I could now intuitively perceive. By day, I practiced on everyone who entered my room, testing theories, refining techniques. The doctors noted my remarkable cognitive recovery, but misinterpreted my new focus as a coping mechanism. They had no idea they were witnessing the construction of a new Katerina, built from the ground up with purpose and precision. My parents brought news from the outside world, carefully edited to spare my feelings. Our family business was struggling without my designs. Raphael had been commissioned for a major photography exhibit. Bianca had changed her hair, her job, her apartment. I absorbed these details with practiced gratitude, storing them away like weapons to be used when the time was right. That time would come. I knew this with absolute certainty. But vengeance required patience and planning. I was still physically broken, financially dependent on my parents, and lacked the leverage necessary to act. So I continued my recovery, meticulous in my physical therapy, cooperative with my doctors, the perfect patient working toward discharge. No one suspected that behind my polite smiles and measured progress was a mind mapping out the systematic destruction of the two people who had betrayed me. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, my course altered unexpectedly. The hospital's arts therapy coordinator introduced a new volunteer, a woman named Lucia Veronese. Unlike the other arts therapy volunteers with their forced cheerfulness and simple projects, Lucia carried herself with quiet confidence and offered actual criticism of my work. She ran a prestigious gallery downtown and visited the hospital once a week, bringing real art supplies and professional insights. On her third visit, she found me sketching jewelry designs, detailed concepts that I had no way to execute in my current state. "These are extraordinary," she said, examining my sketches with genuine interest rather than the usual pity. "The tension between classical forms and modern elements. Are you a professional designer?" I explained my background, my family business, the collections I had designed before my accident. She listened without interruption, her eyes sharp and assessing. "There is a darkness in your work now," she observed, tracing the edge of a particularly aggressive pendant design with her fingertip. "A beautiful darkness." "I died," I replied simply, testing her reaction. "Twice, actually." She didn't flinch or offer platitudes as others did when confronted with this information. She merely nodded, as if this explained everything and nothing at all. "And what came back?" Her question pierced me. No one else had noticed or acknowledged that I wasn't the same person who had gone over that cliff. "Someone who sees clearly," I answered. The connection between us was immediate, though not yet romantic. She visited regularly after that, bringing art books, design magazines, and honest conversation that never dipped into pity or forced optimism. She treated me as a peer, a fellow artist, rather than a tragic figure to be handled with kid gloves. One day, Several months into my recovery, she mentioned photographing an event for a creative director and his fiancé. The photographer was talented but insufferable, she said, rolling her eyes. Raphael something, Italian, very full of himself. My face must have changed at the name because understanding dawned in her eyes. Castiglione, you're Raphael? Not mine anymore, I replied, watching her reaction carefully. Tell me everything, she said, leaning forward. I want to know what kind of man would be fool enough to lose you. I told her then, the whole sordid story. The betrayal, the accident, my strange rebirth. I expected judgment or discomfort, but instead found recognition. Lucia had her own history with betrayal, her own transformation through suffering. As she shared her story with me, I felt something shift between us, a deepening connection based on mutual understanding. What will you do when you leave here? She asked after I had finished physiotherapy for the day, my body trembling with exhaustion. Rebuild, I said, the word encompassing far more than my physical recovery. On my own terms this time. I could use someone with your eye at the gallery, she offered casually. Once you are ready, no pressure or timeline. The offer was genuine, I could tell, not motivated by pity but by professional respect. It represented something I desperately needed, a path forward that wasn't defined by Raphael, Bianca, or my accident. A chance to be more than the woman who had been betrayed and broken. As my discharge date approached, our conversations grew more frequent, more intimate. Lucia brought me news of the art world, gallery gossip, industry movements. One afternoon, she mentioned a photography showcase featuring Raphael's work. Derivative, she pronounced. Technically proficient, but soulless. Though there were some jewelry pieces featured that showed genuine creativity. Strange that they were credited to him, rather than a jewelry designer. A cold realization settled in my stomach. Describe them, I requested, keeping my voice neutral. As she detailed the pieces, my suspicion crystallized into certainty. Those were my designs, concepts I had sketched. Before the accident, ideas I had shared with Raphael and sometimes Bianca. He was not just sleeping with my cousin, he was stealing my creative work. That night, alone in my hospital room, the final piece of my rebirth clicked into place. My desire for justice expanded beyond the personal betrayal to encompass this professional theft. It was no longer just about broken hearts and wedding vows. It was about my legacy, my creative voice, my future in the industry I loved. When Lucia visited the next day, she found me different, more focused, my earlier uncertainty replaced by cold resolve. You have decided something, she observed, always perceptive. I have, I confirmed, and I may need your help. When I finally left the hospital, I was physically healed but unrecognizable in more ways than just the visible scars. My rehabilitation had been grueling, 6 months of relearning how to use my broken body. But the external changes were nothing compared to the internal transformation. Gone were my colorful clothes and exuberant manner, replaced by elegant minimalism and calculated poise. I moved deliberately now, spoke softly, and watched everyone with new eyes that missed nothing. My parents noticed the change but attributed it to trauma. They welcomed me back to their home with relief and concern, walking on eggshells around me as if I might shatter at the mention of Raphael or Bianca. They did not understand that I was no longer fragile. I was tempered steel, forged, in the fire of betrayal and the cold water of rebirth. The first real test of my transformation came at a family gathering, a birthday celebration for my grandmother. I knew Bianca would be there. I could have declined, using my recovery as an excuse, but that would not serve my purpose. So I attended, dressed in a simple black dress that contrasted sharply with my former love of vibrant color, my hair pulled back severely from my face. Conversation stopped when I entered. Relatives who had not seen me since before the accident stared, then rushed forward with embraces and exclamations. I accepted their attention with gracious smiles and deflected their intrusive questions with practiced ease. And all the while, I tracked Bianca in my peripheral vision as she tried desperately to avoid me, keeping to the far corners of the room, her face a study in guilt and fear. I allowed her this avoidance until the party was winding down. Then, as she attempted to slip away unnoticed, I intercepted her in the hallway near the bathrooms. "Bianca," I said softly, watching her freeze like a cornered animal. "We should talk." She turned slowly, her eyes unable to meet mine. "Katerina, this is not the place to discuss what happened. I never meant to hurt you. It just happened, and then things got out of control. And by the time I realized what we were doing to you, it was too late. And then your accident, God, when they told us how serious it was. I thought, if you died, it would be our fault, and I could not live with that guilt. But you survived, thank God. And I have been wanting to apologize but did not know how to approach you after everything." Her words tumbled out in a rush, unplanned and revealing. The old Katerina might have slapped her or screamed or created a scene. The new me simply smiled, a gentle expression that instantly calmed her panic. "I forgive you," I said, watching. Guilt and relief wore on her face. "You do?" she whispered, tears forming. "Katerina, I never meant to fall in love with him. It just happened, and before I knew it, we were in too deep. And then you found us, and everything fell apart." "Life is too short for hatred," I interrupted, my performance flawless. "What happened was meant to be. We cannot control who we love." I reached out and squeezed her hand. "I hope you both find happiness." She broke then, tears streaming down her face as she embraced me, babbling gratitude and promises to make it up to me somehow. Over her shoulder, I caught our reflection in a decorative mirror, her face contorted with emotion, mine serene but eyes cold and calculating. In that moment, I knew my plan would work. She believed completely in my forgiveness, never suspecting that I was now playing a long game that would end with her destruction. The reconnection with Raphael required more finesse. I requested a meeting for closure, suggesting a coffee shop downtown where the public setting would discourage drama. He agreed readily enough, likely expecting accusations and tears, prepared to defend himself against a wounded ex. Instead, he found a serene woman who listened sympathetically as he attempted to justify his actions, his eyes widening slightly at my transformation. I was still beautiful, the accident having left my face unmarked, but it was a different kind of beauty now, cool and controlled rather than vivacious. "You look well," he said awkwardly as we sat down, coffee cups between us like a buffer. "Thank you," I replied with a small smile. "Recovery has been a journey of self-discovery." "Katerina, about what happened," he began, clearly having rehearsed this speech. "I want you to know that I never set out to hurt you. My feelings for Bianca developed gradually, and by the time I recognized them for what they were, it was too late. I should have been honest with you sooner. The way you found out was cruel, and for that, I am truly sorry." I nodded, accepting his apology with apparent grace. "We cannot help who we love, Raphael. I understand that now." Relief flooded his face, followed by confusion. He had expected recrimination, perhaps even public embarrassment. My forgiveness left him off balance, unsure how to proceed. "How are you and Bianca doing?" I asked, keeping my tone light, conversational. "Have you set a new date for the wedding?" He hesitated, then admitted, "Things have been complicated. The guilt over your accident affected both of us deeply. And now Bianca seems, I do not know, different. She checks my phone, questions every late night at the studio. The trust issues are becoming a problem. Trust is difficult after how your relationship began," I observed mildly, watching him flinch at the gentle barb. "But you must be true to yourself, Raphael, always." he did not notice the trap in my encouragement, the subtle push toward his natural selfishness. Instead, he latched on to my apparent understanding, spending the next hour confiding his frustrations about Bianca's growing insecurity, her jealousy, her questions about his female clients. I listened attentively, offering sympathetic noises and carefully phrased comments that validated his feelings without explicitly endorsing his behavior. By the time we parted, he believed we were friends again, that I had matured and moved on, that I might even become an ally in managing Bianca's increasingly difficult behavior. He had no idea that every word he shared was ammunition I would use to destroy them both. Meanwhile, my relationship with Lucia continued to evolve. What had begun as a professional connection in the hospital had deepened into friendship outside those sterile walls. She offered me a position at her gallery, part-time at first as I continued my physical recovery, helping to evaluate new artists and curate upcoming exhibitions. Working with Lucia, I could be neither the old Katerina nor my calculated new persona, but something genuine between the extremes. She saw through my masks with discomforting ease, but never pushed me to explain the contradictions. Instead, she created a safe space where I could explore who I was becoming, without judgment. One evening, after closing the gallery, we shared wine in her office while reviewing portfolio submissions. The conversation drifted from professional assessment to personal revelation as the bottle emptied. "Why did you really offer me this job?" I asked, the question that had lingered since her first offer in the hospital. "Was it pity?" Lucia laughed, the sound genuine and warm. "Katerina, I run a business, not a charity. I offered you the job because you have an extraordinary eye and understand what makes art resonate. Your accident and its circumstances were irrelevant to my decision. Yet you knew about Raphael before you offered," I pointed out. "I knew of him," she corrected. "I had encountered his work and found it technically proficient, but soulless. Learning he was your ex simply confirmed my assessment of his character." Her honesty was refreshing. With her, I felt no need to perform or calculate. That night, after too much wine and truth, I confessed my growing desire for retribution. "I want them to feel what I felt," I admitted, staring into my glass. "Not just the betrayal, but the public humiliation, the destruction of everything they thought was secure." Lucia considered this, her artist's eyes assessing me. "Revenge is just another form of bondage," she said finally. "But justice can be liberating." "What is the difference?" I asked. "Revenge is about them. Justice is about you." She took my hand, her touch sending unexpected warmth through me. "What if we could give you justice and freedom at the same time?" That night, our relationship transformed. As she walked me to my car, the tension between us broke. Her kiss was questioning at first, then confident as I responded. Unlike everything in my life since the accident, this was not calculated or planned. It was real and immediate and alive. As we pulled apart, breathless, she studied my face. "Is this what you want?" For the first time in months, I answered without strategy or forethought. "Yes, this is exactly what I want." In her arms that night, I found something I had not expected in my quest for vengeance, a connection that made me feel human again. As we planned together, her industry connections complementing my intimate knowledge of Raphael and Bianca, we became partners in every sense. We would expose them, yes, but we would also build something beautiful from the wreckage of my past. Over the next 3 months, I played my dual role perfectly. To Bianca, I was the supportive former friend, listening to her wedding anxieties while subtly feeding her suspicions about Raphael. To Raphael, I was the understanding ex, encouraging his artistic ambitions and his growing interest in Lucia's gallery. Neither suspected they were puppets dancing on strings I controlled with increasing precision. My renewed friendship with Bianca proved particularly fruitful. She was eager to maintain our connection, driven by guilt and a desperate need for absolution. We met regularly for coffee or lunch, where she would confide her insecurities about Raphael, his late nights, his frequent interactions with models and clients. I listened with apparent sympathy while planting seeds of doubt. Men in creative fields often blur professional and personal boundaries, I observed during one such lunch. But I am sure Raphael has learned his lesson about keeping secrets. Her face tightened at this, confirming my suspicion that their trust issues were worsening. He says I am paranoid, that I should trust him after everything we risked to be together. Trust must be earned, I replied, my voice gentle but words calculated to heighten her anxieties, especially given how your relationship began. With Raphael, I employed different tactics. Our occasional coffees became a forum for his complaints about Bianca's irrational jealousy and suffocating neediness. I presented myself as the voice of reason, the one who truly understood his artistic temperament. Lucia mentioned your work, I told him casually during one such meeting. She is very selective about who she represents. His eyes lit with ambition, just as I had anticipated. Lucia's gallery was prestigious. Her shows regularly featured in major art publications. A connection there could elevate his career from commercial success to critical acclaim. Could you introduce us properly? He asked, trying to mask his eagerness. A show at her gallery would transform my career. Of course, I agreed, smiling in a way he interpreted as friendly rather than predatory. We are friends now, after all. The introduction was arranged, a professional meeting at the gallery after hours. I observed from the background as Lucia assessed his portfolio with calculated interest, asking questions that stroked his ego while revealing his artistic limitations. She was masterful, leading him to believe she might consider him for a future show while extracting information about his recent projects and inspirations. What neither Raphael nor Bianca suspected was that during this careful dance of manipulation, I had discovered something far worse than their affair. While helping Bianca organize wedding gifts at their apartment, I excused myself to use the bathroom. A detour to Raphael's home office revealed sketches of my jewelry designs among his papers, designs he was now claiming as his own for an upcoming collection. The preliminary marketing materials credited him as the designer, with only a small note acknowledging inspiration from traditional Greek motifs. That night, I showed the evidence to Lucia, my hands trembling with rage. He is not just sleeping with my cousin, he is stealing my work, my creative voice, my professional future. Lucia examined the sketches, her expression hardening as she recognized designs I had shown her during my hospital recovery. This changes everything, she said, her voice low with anger on my behalf. This is not just about broken hearts anymore. He is stealing your legacy. Our plan evolved. Lucia began corresponding with Raphael professionally, ostensibly about featuring his photography but actually collecting evidence of his stolen designs. She flirted just enough to encourage his ego, to make him believe his charm was working, while gathering the ammunition we needed. He sent me his proposal for the jewelry collection, she told me one evening, forwarding his email to my phone. Look at the language he uses, claiming original design concepts. He even references your accident as inspiration for the rebirth. Themes, without acknowledging that they are literally your designs created before you nearly died. The evidence was damning. In his eagerness to impress Lucia, Raphael had sent detailed descriptions of the design process, timelines that clearly overlapped with our relationship, and even early sketches that I could prove were mine. His arrogance made him careless, believing that I was too broken to fight back, that my near death had cleared the path for his theft. Meanwhile, my relationship with Lucia deepened into something I had never experienced before, a connection based on mutual respect and understanding rather than just passion. For the first time, I recognized what love could be when it was not consuming or dramatic. but steady and true. In quiet evenings at her apartment, planning our strategy while sharing meals and wine, I found myself laughing genuinely, feeling emotions that were not calculated or performed. "Are you sure about this?" Lucia asked one night as we finalized our plan, her fingers intertwined with mine on her kitchen table. "Once we do this, there is no going back. Your history with them will be public in ways you might not anticipate." I thought about the old Katerina, who would have burned everything down in blind rage, and the cold calculator I had become after my rebirth. With Lucia, I was finding a third version of myself, someone capable of justice without self-destruction. "I am sure," I answered, squeezing her hand. "Not just for revenge, but for me. For us. For my future as a designer, reclaiming what is rightfully mine." The wedding invitations arrived the following week, elegant cream cardstock with gold foil accents. Despite everything, Bianca had invited me, partly from guilt, partly to prove she had won. The envelope included a handwritten note expressing hope that I would attend as we all move forward into new chapters of our lives. I RSVP'd with a simple yes, the single word representing the final piece of our plan falling into place. As the wedding date approached, I increased the frequency of my meetings with both Raphael and Bianca, separately of course. With her, I helped address invitations and discussed flower arrangements, playing the supportive friend while subtly noting Raphael's continued late nights and secretive phone calls. With him, I reinforced his growing artistic connection with Lucia, encouraging his belief that she might feature him prominently in an upcoming exhibition. "She seems quite taken with your work," I observed during our last coffee before the wedding, "particularly the jewelry collection." "I was inspired," he claimed, shameless in his theft. "The accident made me realize how fragile life is, how we must seize creative opportunities when they present themselves." I nodded, my smile never reaching my eyes. "Indeed, life can change in an instant. One moment you are on top of the world, the next, everything you thought was secure is gone." He mistook my words for philosophical reflection on my own experience, rather than the warning they were. We parted with a friendly embrace, his mind already on the potential career advancement Lucia represented, completely unaware that he was walking into a trap of his own making. The night before the wedding, Lucia and I made our final preparations. We had collected all the evidence, secured the technical support needed, and confirmed our timing. Everything was in place for the public reckoning that would occur in less than 24 hours. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Lucia said as we lay in bed, her arm around my waist, "remember that this is about reclaiming your voice, your work, your dignity, not just about their punishment." I turned to face her in the darkness, struck by how this woman who had entered my life by chance had become my center, my partner in both justice and healing. "I know. For the first time since the accident, I feel like I am moving towards something, not just away from what happened." She kissed me softly. "That is how I know this is right. You are not destroying yourself to destroy them. You are reclaiming your power." As I drifted to sleep in her arms, I thought about how differently this revenge was unfolding from what I had initially imagined. The old Katerina would have wanted drama, tears, a spectacular confrontation. The cold, calculating person born in that hospital bed would have engineered something cruelly elegant but emotionally detached. This plan, our plan, was something else entirely. A perfect blend of justice and rebirth that would expose the truth while creating space for my new future. The wedding invitations had promised a celebration of two souls becoming one. They had no idea that tomorrow, their souls would be laid bare before everyone they knew. Their deception exposed not through angry accusations, but through their own words and actions. The evidence would speak for itself, and I would watch it all unfold, finally free of the weight of their betrayal. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, sunshine streaming through scattered clouds as if even the heavens approved of this union built on betrayal. The ceremony was planned for late afternoon at a historic estate overlooking the city, followed by a sunset reception in the gardens. I arrived early, as I had promised Bianca when she nervously asked if I would help her prepare. The bridal suite was a flurry of activity, bridesmaids and stylists flitting about while Bianca sat before a vanity, already in her undergarments, hair partially styled. Her eyes met mine in the mirror as I entered, relief washing over her features. "You came," she said, as if she had half expected me to change my mind despite all our recent reconciliation. "Thank you." I promised, did I not? I moved to her side, setting down the small bag of emergency supplies I had brought. "You look beautiful." It was not a lie. Bianca was radiant with anticipated triumph, believing she had everything she wanted. The man, the future, even my forgiveness. The dress hung nearby, a confection of silk and lace that had cost more than most people made in a month. "I am so nervous," she confessed as the makeup artist worked on her face. "Not about marrying Raphael, but about the ceremony itself. So, many people watching, judging." "Everything is arranged perfectly," I assured her, helping to organize the jewelry she would wear, pieces from both her family and Raphael's. "Nothing will go wrong that cannot be fixed." She smiled gratefully, unaware of the double meaning in my words. For the next hour, I fulfilled my role as supportive friend, adjusting her veil, fetching water, soothing her nerves with calming words. All the while, I was texting Lucia updates from my position inside the preparations. When it was time, I helped Bianca into her dress, carefully fastening the tiny pearl buttons that ran down her spine. Her father would arrive soon to escort her down the aisle. My part in the bridal suite was nearly complete. "You look stunning," I told her as she stood before the full-length mirror, a vision in white. "Raphael is a fortunate man." "Thank you, Katerina," she replied, tears threatening to ruin her carefully applied makeup. "For everything. For being here, for forgiving us. It means the world that we can all move forward now, that there are no hard feelings." I embraced her gently, careful not to disturb her dress. "No hard feelings," I echoed, my voice warm while my eyes remained cold. What happened was meant to be. Leaving her with the bridal party, I slipped out to take my seat for the ceremony. The grand hall was decorated with thousands of flowers, the scent almost overwhelming as guests filed in. I had chosen a seat near the back, unobtrusive but with a clear view of both the altar and the large screens positioned to display romantic photos of the couple during the ceremony. Lucia was already seated nearby, stunning in a deep blue dress that brought out the warmth in her eyes. We exchanged subtle nods. Everything was in place. Our technician had confirmed access to the venue's AV system, and the evidence was ready, to be displayed at precisely the right moment. The music began, signaling the start of the ceremony. Raphael appeared at the altar, handsome in his tailored tuxedo, but visibly nervous, eyes darting occasionally to where Lucia sat. I suppressed a smile at his transparent ambition, still believing he might secure a professional relationship with her, despite his impending marriage to Bianca. The bridesmaids processed, followed by a flower girl scattering rose petals. Then, the music changed, and all stood as Bianca appeared at the entrance on her father's arm. She was radiant, her face glowing with happiness as she began her walk down the aisle toward the man she believed loved her completely. She made it halfway. The screens flickered, the romantic photos of the couple replaced by text messages, email, exchanges between Raphael and Lucia. Not romantic missives, but professional correspondence that damned him completely. "These designs will secure your place in my gallery," one message read. "The Greek-inspired collection is truly innovative." Another showed Raphael's response. "I have been developing these concepts for years. though recent events gave me the final inspiration to complete them. No one needs to know they were originally Katerina's concepts. Gasps erupted throughout. The hall. Bianca froze midway down the aisle, her expression crumbling as she read the messages. Raphael's face drained of color as he realized his double betrayal was now public. His infidelity to his bride and his theft from his ex-fiancée exposed simultaneously. Then came the evidence about the designs themselves, side-by-side comparisons, of my original sketches and his inspired collection. The dates were clearly visible, proving that these were concepts I had created before the accident, before he had stolen them along with my cousin. Is this true? Bianca's voice cut through the murmurs, addressing not Raphael but me where I sat, outwardly calm amid the chaos. I stood slowly, all eyes turning to me. Ask him, I replied, gesturing to where Raphael stood paralyzed by the altar. Ask him about the emerald and diamond pendant in his new collection, the one I designed the night he proposed in Santorini. Chaos erupted. Bianca's father surged toward Raphael as guests began recording on phones. Industry professionals, who had come to celebrate, were now witnessing the implosion of Raphael's career in real time. You stole her work? Bianca's voice rose above the commotion, her perfect day shattered beyond repair. You told me those designs were yours, that you were inspired by her accident to create them. You built our future on lies? Raphael attempted damage control, his hands raised placatingly. Bianca, please, this is a misunderstanding. I was influenced by Katerina's style, yes, but these are my original interpretations. Original interpretations? Another email appeared on screen, this one dated before my accident. Attached are the final sketches for the Greek Heritage Collection. Let me know what you think before I take them to production. The attached images were unmistakably my work, concepts Raphael now claimed as his own. The evidence was irrefutable, the timeline damning. His theft was not opportunistic after my accident. It had been planned while we were still together, while he was already involved with Bianca. Amid the growing pandemonium, I slipped out unnoticed, making my way to the garden where Lucia waited as planned. She took my hand, concern etched on her beautiful face. Are you all right? She asked softly, searching my expression. I watched through the windows as Raphael attempted to calm both Bianca and her enraged father, as guests filmed the unfolding disaster, as years of deception collapsed in minutes. Yes, I said, surprised to find it was true. Better than I expected. Was it worth it? Lucia asked, her thumb tracing circles on my palm. I continued watching as security tried to establish order as Bianca's mother led her sobbing daughter away, as Raphael stood abandoned at the altar. Not for the reasons I expected, I admitted. I thought I wanted to see them suffer, but really, I just needed everyone to see the truth, including me. She squeezed my hand. And what truth is that? That I deserved better, I said simply. And finally found it. Lucia smiled, understanding the layers in my answer. We had planned to slip away completely, to let the chaos unfold without us, but a sudden impulse made me pause. Wait, I said, releasing her hand. There is one more thing I need to do. I re-entered the hall, moving against the tide of guests now exiting in confusion and excitement. Raphael stood alone by the altar, his best man and groomsmen having abandoned. Him as the evidence of his theft became incontrovertible. He looked up as I approached, his face a mixture of anger and defeat. You planned this, he said flatly. All of it. The friendship, the forgiveness, the introduction to Lucia. It was all to destroy me? No, I corrected calmly. It was to reclaim what was mine, my designs, my dignity, my future. You took everything from me, Raphael, not just my fiancé, but my creative voice. Did you think I would simply disappear after the accident? That I would remain the broken woman you left behind? He had no answer, his arrogance finally silenced by the completeness of his downfall. "The difference between us," I continued, my voice steady, "is that you destroyed to possess. I exposed to liberate. Everyone now knows the truth about who created those designs. My name will be restored to my work, and you will be remembered, if at all, as a thief of hearts and art." I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me. "You will regret this, Katerina. No one likes a vengeful woman. This spectacle will damage you too." I looked back at him over my shoulder, no longer the passionate girl he had betrayed, nor the calculating woman who had planned his downfall, but someone new, someone whole. This was not vengeance, Raphael. It was justice. Learn the difference while you still can. Outside, Lucia waited in the garden, golden afternoon light illuminating her like a Renaissance painting. She extended her hand, and I took it without hesitation. "Ready?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, feeling lighter than I had in months. "For whatever comes next." As we walked away from the destroyed wedding, distant sounds of argument and recrimination fading behind us, I realized that the plan had worked even better than anticipated. Not only had Raphael and Bianca been exposed, but I had been freed, released from the weight of their betrayal and my obsession with making them pay. The justice had been served, yes, but more importantly, I had reclaimed myself in the process. Ahead lay an exhibition to plan, my rebirth collection to finalize, a partnership both professional and personal to nurture. For the first time since going over that cliff, I was looking forward rather than back, moving toward a future of my own design rather than being defined by what had been taken from me. 1 week after the wedding disaster, the aftermath continued to unfold. Raphael's career lay in ruins. The gallery scene closing ranks against him, not just for his personal betrayal, but for the unforgivable sin of stealing another artist's work. A statement from the jewelry manufacturer announced they were pulling his collection and investigating the true provenance of the designs. His photography commissions dried up as well, clients unwilling to associate with someone branded a thief in creative circles. Bianca had fled to Europe, unable to face the humiliation of being left at the altar and implicated in design theft. Her social media went dark after a single post announcing her need for privacy during this difficult time. Mutual acquaintances reported she was staying with distant relatives in Milan, far from the gossip and pitying glances that would have followed her in our social circles. While their lives collapsed, mine flourished. Lucia and I had been working tirelessly on the exhibition that would mark my professional rebirth. We transformed her gallery for the opening of my Rebirth series, jewelry inspired by my journey from death to new life. Each piece told part of my story, from the darkness of betrayal to the clarity that came after dying twice. The centerpiece was the most personal. Working with a photographer friend, Lucia had captured an image of the ravine where I had crashed. I transformed that photograph into a pendant, the stark landscape encased in silver and emeralds that matched the ring Raphael had once placed on my finger in Santorini. Beauty emerging from destruction, life reclaimed from the sight of death. The night of the exhibition opening, I stood in the gallery surrounded by my work, watching as critics and collectors moved from piece to piece, their expressions shifting from admiration to awe. The scandal from the wedding had created initial buzz, but the quality of the work itself was sustaining attention beyond mere gossip. Katerina. A voice at my elbow drew my attention, an influential critic whose reviews could make or break emerging artists. These pieces are extraordinary. The narrative arc through the collection, from the darkness of these earlier pieces to the transcendence in the later works, it speaks to something universal while remaining deeply personal. I thanked her, explaining the inspiration behind specific elements without revealing the full emotional context. She did not need to know that the jagged edge on the betrayal bracelet mimicked the guardrail that had failed to keep my car on, the mountain road, or that the intertwined strands in the connection necklace represented not just any relationship, but specifically what I had found with Lucia. "I especially appreciate your reclamation of traditional Greek motifs," the critic continued, gesturing to several pieces that incorporated elements from my heritage. "The way you have subverted classic patterns to express contemporary emotional states is masterful." She moved on to speak with another artist, and Lucia appeared at my side, radiant in a dress that complemented the gallery lighting. "That was Elise Hammond," she murmured. "Her review can change everything." "Everything has already changed," I replied, surveying the packed gallery. Orders were coming in steadily, with several pieces already marked sold. My parents stood near the entrance, pride evident in their faces as they explained to anyone who would listen that I was their daughter, that the artistic talent ran in our family. A week later, Hammond's review appeared online and in print, glowing with praise. "Davalos does not just create jewelry. She forges emotional landscapes in metal and stone," she wrote. "Her Rebirth collection marks the emergence of a singular voice in contemporary jewelry design, one that speaks to resilience and transformation with uncommon eloquence." Orders flooded in after the review. Suddenly, the name that had been associated with scandal was now synonymous with artistic triumph. Galleries in Paris and New York expressed interest in showing my work. A high-end department store requested an exclusive line based on elements from the Rebirth collection. In our private moments, Lucia and I sometimes marveled at how perfectly our plan had worked, not just exposing Raphael and Bianca, but launching my career free from the shadow of my past. "I never expected this level of success," I admitted one evening as we closed the gallery after another busy day. "When I planned their destruction, I thought it would be the end of something. Instead, it was just the beginning." "That is the difference between revenge and justice," Lucia replied, turning off the lights so only the subtle illumination of my jewelry cases remained. "Revenge is a conclusion. Justice opens doors." She was right. The old Katerina had died. In that ravine, the woman who defined herself by others' love, who burned too bright and too chaotically. The cold, calculating person who had emerged in the hospital had served her purpose, but was not meant to last either. With Lucia, I had found my true rebirth, someone balanced between passion and wisdom, between creativity and discipline. We received occasional updates about Raphael and Bianca through industry gossip and mutual connections. He had attempted to rebuild his photography career in a smaller market, claiming he had been misunderstood and unfairly maligned. Few believed him. The evidence I had presented at the wedding was too damning, the documentation too thorough. His name had become cautionary tale in creative circles, mentioned in the same breath as other notorious plagiarists. Bianca eventually returned from Europe, humbled and withdrawn. She reached out once via email, a carefully worded message that stopped short of a true apology while acknowledging that things happened that should not have. I responded with formal politeness, but maintained my distance. The connection we had once shared was irretrievably broken, and I had no interest in rebuilding bridges with someone who had betrayed me so completely. Sometimes I think about them, about how they must hate me now, but their hatred tethers them to the past, while I have moved forward. They took each other and lost everything. I lost everything and found myself. 6 months after the exhibition opening, Lucia and I moved in together, combining our living spaces as seamlessly as we had merged our professional lives. Her eye for curation complemented my creative process. Her business acumen balanced my artistic temperament. We were not just partners, but catalysts for each other's growth. The Ravine pendant remained the signature piece of my collection, the one that journalists always asked about in interviews. I developed a standard response, explaining that it represented the transformative power of surviving the unsurvivable, of finding strength in moments of greatest vulnerability. What I did not tell them was that I had visited the site myself. Before creating the piece, had stood at the edge and looked down at where my car had come to rest, had felt not fear or trauma, but a profound sense of gratitude for the death and rebirth that had occurred there. On the anniversary of my accident, Lucia suggested we take a trip to Santorini, reclaiming the place where Raphael had proposed with his grandmother's emerald ring. We stood on the same cliffside at sunset, the white buildings painted gold and rose just as they had been that day. "Are you thinking about him?" Lucia asked as we watched the sun sink toward the horizon. "No," I replied honestly. "I am thinking about how life takes us on unexpected journeys, how we can never predict where we will end up or who we will become." She took my hand, and I felt again that sense of rightness, of having found not just a partner, but a harbor after the storm. "What do you want now, Katerina, now that everything has changed?" I considered the question, looking out over the Mediterranean as it darkened from turquoise to midnight blue. The answer came with surprising clarity. To create, to love, to live as if every day is a gift, because it is. To remember what it cost to be reborn, but not to be defined by it. She smiled, understanding as she always did the layers in my answer. We stayed until the stars emerged, brilliance scattered across the velvet sky. I thought about cycles, about endings and beginnings, about how sometimes we must lose everything to find what we truly need. As Lucia and I walk back to our hotel, I touch the pendant at my throat, the ravine where I died, transformed into art. Like me, it has been reborn into something more beautiful, more valuable, and infinitely more resilient than before. The betrayal that once defined me is now just part of my story, not its conclusion. Ahead lies creation and connection, challenges and triumphs that have nothing to do with revenge or the past. I am reborn, and this time, the life I build will be entirely my own design,